I'm David Brudenell, Executive Chair and Co-CEO of Decidr. I enjoy arguing with Paul Chan.
That means we can be right or wrong, and I love being wrong. I just doesn't happen that often.
This is Decidr Room. Each month, we take a belief, break it down, discuss it, and see what it's made of. Hi, I'm David Brudenell, Executive Chairman and Co-CEO of Decidr, Canadian-born, Aussie-bred, and I like good technology.
Hi, I'm Paul Chan, the founder of Decidr and co-CEO, and I would like to spend some time sharing my ideas, thoughts about what's going on with AI, as well as the world.
One of the things we'll discuss today is the beliefs that organizations have. And sometimes they're called different things. They're called culture and they're called operating systems. But there isn't really a lot of operating system. It's more around the beliefs that people have shared with each other through conversations, through watching each other, talking to customers, talking to vendors. And that is what, in most cases, is called tacit knowledge. And that tacit knowledge has not really been recorded anywhere. But if you walked into the company and you watched it, you'd see that it did operate in a particular way and the language was very similar. I think there's a very big opportunity as well as a very obvious imposing challenge that AI now forces on everybody, which is how do you take that and codify it and make it yours? Because those people traditionally have walked out of the door every night. You hope they come back tomorrow. And there's now an opportunity, and there always has been an opportunity, but I think it's more important than ever because what will happen if that isn't the case is quite significant and has pretty bad consequences for a lot of businesses if they don't start to think about what AI means and also the amount of information that their team is providing to AI and different sorts of AI models every day.
I think belief's a big word. It's a big word. It's not well understood. It's highly interpretable. I think like functionally, I agree with Paul. I agree with what you're talking about. I think like it's hard. It's just becoming difficult to unpack what beliefs are within organizations, as you said. Like it's called 5,000 different names, and there's no real owner of beliefs at the moment, with the exception of like Dorsey is a good example. Like when he wrote the what was it called? Operational infrastructure. Age of organizations, right? Like that's a leader which has clear vision on what it is, and actually a good language, piece of language, right? I suspect that he did a lot of writing of that. I think that that example is very much the exception, right, to the rule. And so I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done to like unpack, which is what we're doing today, I guess, is to unpack like what are beliefs, like where are they within the organization? Is culture a belief? Is that a manifestation of belief? Maybe, right? Who owns a culture, right? Is it the leadership? Is it the people? Is it bottom up? Is it top down? But like principally, I agree with you. I think it's like, but it's a big, maybe I'll just end with that without prattling on, but like, it's a big thing. So like, I think the more interesting thing is like, how do you actually unpack it? Because working with you for such a long time, like you have a handle of it. So it becomes easy for you. Like we were doing this podcast before and like name a belief. And I was like, oh, where do I start? Right. You were knifing right in. So that's probably a good example of like needing to unpack it first before you actually start knifing it in.
Let's do that. I think I really do think that you make an incredibly important point around what will continually be something that the world will need to do, I think, which is really spend more time doing something I hated to do as a kid, which is really good as a details of language. And I know that you had people in the education space in your family, Mark. And so you mentioned something to me, must have been 15 years ago, about the fact that your mother sort of made a pretty big impression on you around learning how to learn. And I think the sort of evergreen opportunity of that is really where we have to now take that and statements like that really seriously, because if you unpack what you would call the context window and all of these sort of big fancy words that we're now having to deal with, a context window is just formed by your experiences and all of the things that you have learned over the years, the understanding of language. And so I think words do have a critical impact now. And I think the accuracy of words matters more than ever. And it matters more than ever because humans have this incredible capability to talk with, let's say, less accuracy in their words, but be completely understood. And that's just a superpower that we have. But now we have this opportunity with large language models and artificial intelligence. We can really ensure that the language that the organizations use, particularly through structure flows and things that we feel very passionate about, that becomes really foundational to what we call deterministic understanding. And so the language itself and the accuracy of the language is critical. One of the things that I have spent enormous amounts of time on to get to the foundation of, let's call it, all propositions. So belief is really formed out of proposition, and that is again a fancy way to say this is something, and if we spend enough time analyzing it, we can come up with some language. And we all know that it's a glass, and we know that it holds liquid, in this case water, but that isn't necessarily the type of language that we would use. And so huge amounts of the world is unseen, and the most unseen thing is actually of the words that are coming out of our mouths can't be seen, and so they have to get interpreted. And so that interpretation, again, in a fancy way, is called inference. And so it's as soon as you use a word that, especially when you have to talk about it, and people talk more and more even in acronyms, and so there are all sorts of words flying around corporations and everyday life, but in particular business. Sometimes that domain knowledge is truly understood, and then sometimes people are talking about exactly the same things in different ways, or talking about exactly the same thing in different meanings. And so we have a big opportunity to sort of move forward with different ways to solve that.
I think you're being very generous. Well, thanks for bringing Mom. Yes, she did teach me to learn how to learn. Mission not achieved yet. But like, I might argue the point. Like, yes on language. Yes on language, and yes on large language models actually understanding language better than humans. I don't think you and I are going to disagree on that. I think actually beliefs are really low in people. I think they're incredibly low. Just generally, that's my first general statement. My second is not only are they unknown professionally to most, they're like the average employee in a business doesn't really care. So, like, what's your take on that response?
Actually, I can't really argue with that. I think it's right. No, I think we've had the opportunity to work in extremely large numbers of let's call it knowledge gathering exercises, but qualitative, asking people what's questions, open-ended answers, voice focus groups, whatever it might be. And then turning that into something that we can quantify when you have enough of it. What I definitely believe, and again, to have kind of high conviction in your beliefs, which is really what you're talking about, in my opinion.
Oh, understanding as well, like what is a belief, right? I mean, probably we could talk about it a little bit later, but like if we went through the org, you mentioned culture, you mentioned strategy, you mentioned leadership, like those are belief areas. We could probably spend hours just like diving through one of them, right? But just if we talk about like migration, like herd migration, I mean, when it comes to beliefs, like how do you even like what's the impetus to start the migration, right, within a company?
Look, that's the perfect analogy, because the foundational dynamics of the herd, which is incredibly efficient energy-wise and incredibly foundational when it comes to improving, let's say, safety and the ability to get from one place to another. It always takes leadership, and so there is
or fear.
Well, there's always a head of the pack, and that if that head of the pack moves the pack, then invariably what you're talking about in terms of care, I would sort of possibly argue that it's just decisions they didn't make. And so if people don't make that many decisions, then the confidence that they would have in, and quite logically, the confidence that they would have in trying to interpret why the leader didn't move the herd, I think that's very something that's it's going to take a long time for people to understand and be aware of. as they now have the ability to ask more of both artificial intelligence. But I think all the leaders are being asked that now, and the leaders have to sort of have a pretty clear view on where they're going to go. So I think another thing to really drill into and tear apart, because it's factual, and I don't think anyone's really going to argue with it, is there's existential change. There's things that are being forced on every organization in the modern world, and that forced change is obviously not going to slow down. It's only speeding up, and that means that what would normally have taken a lot longer, and any type of adoption curve or any type of decisions that the boards are making or leaders are making, we've had time to see where the head was moving. We had time to see what was going on, who was the most logical people to follow. Even if you were an early adopter, you were still following an innovator. That took some time. We've moved into a pretty big mess where every organization is being asked by their employees, by their board, leaders being asked by their board, by their shareholders, what are you doing about this storm that is obviously going to change the landscape, that is obviously going to change the way things happen. So I think there's a very big need to have conversations that really help people understand that the adoption curve has been compressed, and that's not a natural thing, and that's very, very uncomfortable. And as I was sort of saying before, the herd is a very efficient system. So when you can follow the leader, and the leader really has done the work to make sure that they navigate and they get to that safer space, that new upgrade in place, like happened with the internet. This is kind of like a deja vu moment for me. There's huge amounts of similarities to the internet, and people would talk with that language like, what are you doing and how are you doing the internet? And it's very similar now. It's like, how are you doing AI? We still haven't built the language. We haven't got concepts like e-commerce. We haven't got concepts that allow sort of people to drill down right into the specifics and the mechanics of the specifics.
Yeah. But why start at police? Why not start at those things?
Look, I think if you don't start at where the foundations are, and the foundations are really what you would call the elephants in the room. The elephants in the room are, there is intelligence that you can call as an API, with a computer program that can literally boil the ocean and search and pull back information and predict that information at levels that I just don't think anyone can really argue with anymore. And also the starting point and the I think the point you were making about meaning and care, I don't truly believe people don't care. I just don't think people have the opportunity because of the way that organizations have formed over the last 150 years, which is very much what Jack Dorsey and Sequoia were trying to talk about, which I do believe is worthwhile examining. So why would organizations exist like they do today? What has really made the modern world so they're ultra successful in what they've done? Everything that we're wearing and the world that we live in now is driven by organizations that have these goals, and they achieve these goals, and they realize these people.
I do think there is the argument that it's a false fallacy, because you've got like people like Dorsey, like the people in the world who have very high agency. They have high agency, they have high capital, they have high momentum, they have high access, right? So access has changed, right? Because everybody has access to AI at the moment, which is cool. But like put that down into, if we go back to the herd, like put that back into the herd, like the average person, I'll pose this question, like does the average person have high agency as compared to Dorsey or somebody like the other bros?
I think the answer is, if you move the context slightly and you took a mother or a father, and they wake up every day, and part of, or one of the main roles they play, they may have their own careers. They could be in different community groups, but I do believe that they have agency, and I do believe that they
professional agency, like, because that's where we got to play, right?
I think professional agency is contextual again around a role. And so if I was to summarize the complexities or difficulties of what certain people are able to achieve in running an household, and then compare that to the level of capability or agency or certain competencies that they show in that role, yes, I could argue very clearly. I think a lot of people would understand that it degrades very quickly, that there's an amount of care that degrades very quickly because the context and the importance is not there for them. But I do also think that, people like the team that's working inside Decider and the opportunity to understand, again, very words that we may have been using for a long time, but words like agency, they're now kind of zeitgeist. I hear them everywhere. I hear the word agency everywhere, but people need to understand that agency is formed around certain goals. And I think, the goals are really what we're talking about, and the belief around what you can do and the attainability of those goals, that's really what we're talking about. So if I was to pose an argument or a counter argument, wouldn't some capability like intelligence, which is, the foundational substrate of everything they're talking about, if that capability was given to people so that they could have higher agency, so that they could navigate the world, and remember that if they're following instructions and orders, procedures, rules in their organizations, that's still defined intelligence. That's literally what it means. And so if they're able to follow that, and that intelligence is not theirs, we're not really talking about arguing about what's the capability of an individual. We're talking about what and how those people are now going to get that information to allow them to move forward, where a lot of the time they don't have to do the work themselves. And that means that they're moving much more into a situation in which they're giving, let's say, orders, and they're orchestrating things into existence, and they're spending more and more time on making sure, like you would as a leader or manager in an organization, that those tasks are being done well. And I think as soon as people start to realize that, there's going to be, fairly fast adoption change. And I think when you talk about big words and lack of belief, I think that again is going to be something that becomes much more nuanced, and people are going to care about those nuances much more, like what's those principles and what's deterministic versus, what do we hope for and what's probabilistic.
Mm-hmm. In episode 2, which I'm going to title the sweatpants episode because we'll dress much more comfortably than we are at the moment. I am going to become a bit more prepared, but
It's very disconcerting. I was trying to find it.
we got to get a shtick for. We have to get a shtick for this podcast. We can't just talk about beliefs all the time. It's super boring. We're gonna have like one subscriber. We got to put. But one of the top uses for ChatGPT is for, like, let's call it bridging psychology services. So if I was to take the position to say people are looking at this tool and they don't know what to do with it, they're asking it, "What should I do? How do I feel?" How do you balance that against agency, right? So, for the average employee, whether it be the specialist or whether they have high agency, I think we can talk through that. But like, what does that? How do they have high agency if the way that we're using the tool today is on the surface low agency?
Well, I mean, again, I definitely want to push back on that. I don't agree. I think you mentioned two things in one sentence that are different. Someone asking about themselves and talking and really sort of treating it like a guide or a mentor or a psychologist, that's about as high agency as it gets. And people have had the opportunity to ask books or ask and hope that podcasts give them some of that information back. But now they've got a capability to ask and constantly be asked, which means you're building up a much bigger personalized output. And that personalized output is literally what the stepping stones to high agency is. And I think that is why I'm so excited when I hear those sorts of stats. And I've had quite a few conversations about this. I think that is possibly one of the fastest accelerators of high agency. And that is going to be something that I think everybody literally needs in their lives. Maybe they're not as lucky as we are, where we have each other and we have an incredibly large number of other people, intelligences that we can ask. But also we have to come up with our own pretty high conviction decisions. And that's really what it comes down to. If you can't come up with your own decisions easily, that's a process. I do believe you can go through that process, but you have to have very real and honest responses. And that's why I would really draw another line. And I'm very nervous about sycophantic behavior, and I'm very nervous about what that potential we could mean, and you think about people that do actually get confidences that are not real, and that becomes a very nerve-wracking situation for pretty high stakes things.
Yes, yes. So says many lonely men. I'm talking to their AI at the moment. But I think like that goes down to the first point, which is the definition of language. So yes, you are correct. I want to it is very high agency if you're saying I don't know what to do with myself and I'm going to use this thing, right? And so access, right? Definitely, that's a really positive thing. But just like again, juxtaposing it, why I brought that up is yes, people can go. I agree with you. People can go and I can ask you, I can ask Vivian, I can ask other people about an idea or get perspective on that. So yeah, going to an AI is another one of those things. But
Well, it's happening. It's definitely, I'm sorry, it is, it's
happening
definitely en
en
masse, and
masse,
it's definitely
for sure.
real, and it's definitely powerful. So whether that supports higher agency, I don't think is in the end going to be.
Yeah, you get where I'm going, right?
I do, but there's high agency that comes from people watching podcasts that also. We're not really talking about agency. We're talking about exactly what this podcast is about, which is propositions. So, if I get a podcast and the propositions, which are where they form the beliefs that I should, act in a certain way, and that way is really going to be counter to both civic realities and what possibly has been a bit of a pushback against people not being able to talk more transparently and not being able to be as open and honest about how they feel, because their feelings are, frankly, again, an interpretation of the propositions. So that sounds like very kind of highfalutin language. And to dumb it down, in this way, if somebody is being heavily influenced, then that is by definition not high agency. And the conflict and the real problem of that is that feels like very high urgency. Yes, you've copied somebody else, but you haven't really come to those conclusions yourself. You haven't done the work to come to those conclusions yourself. And I think that's where that herd mentality thing you're talking about.
Yeah. So with the leaders and low agency, like you get caught in the loop, right? Where a few people control the agency, capital A, right? And then there's the perception of agency, right? Let's bring it back to professional, right? I know I took us off to personal stuff, or personal agency. No, I know. That's episode 3. But you kind of get you get my point, right? Which is that there's the perception of agency that is happening, but like what is really going to happen, right? If there is, there's almost like whether or not it's earned personally or not. So let's use Dorsey, right? He has earned agency within his domain, right? Both his public figure, both within the business, both personally, I'd imagine. But then there's all the employees at Block and was Cash App, right? And well, that agency extended as far as to 3,000 people getting or 6,000 people getting chopped, right? That came out of it. So how does that what's the interplay? What does it look like? So going back to beliefs, I want beliefs to be owned and earned by all employees, but will that happen?
But that's you're absolutely right in trying to point out the current situation. I think we should probably just to help everyone contextualize our relationship a little bit more. I'm obviously coming from a place of where I believe the world can go and where I believe the current situation status is, its current state is. And so I do want to change and provide opportunities for that higher agency life to be lived. And that definitely, most importantly, I think should be contrasted against something that you understand. And I watch you do this all the time around people and the way that people like to be told what to do and the way in which that still produces high value. And, we're talking about trading off things that we know work with things that we know will theoretically be better. But is that, and maybe this is what we're arguing, but is that possible? I with to 99.9% degree of confidence, I'm trying to stop 100%, just 99.9. I do believe that it's possible, and I think.
And no one believed that you could, and anyone before the internet thought that you could make a sale on the internet. That's the perfect example, right? You could pick up the phone, you could have a meeting in person, and you say that's the way you're going to sell. And never going to be a better way of buying something, right? Or going to a department store. And
Let's go right to the argument that we have all the time, which is I do want people to understand that they can do these new things, and you want to make sure that people pay for the things that they are comfortable to do right now, and that's really a very important sort of tension, I think, that matters. And so we both have to talk about our boys quite a lot, maybe in different ways, and maybe in different, certainly with different times. But I don't think we're saying different things. I don't think you could. I could argue with you if we went back to the Ford factory line and an Italian immigrant that had just come off the line, doesn't even speak English. We've been rolled into this thing called a classroom. I don't want to know what's called classroom, but let's just say it's a type of class of education. And I was being told with mostly signs and signals what I should be doing to do the one task, but I have to go on the Ford factory assembly line. Now,
I'm naming you Giuseppe, this particular example.
Giuseppe. So let's assume I'm in a very interesting Giuseppe yesterday.
I know, that's why.
But let's assume that Giuseppe looks around and he spends a little bit of time in his unique country like America, and he may dream one day of having a car. He can't afford one right now, and he can't even dream about having his own house, or even dream about even potentially having leisure time. All these brand new creative concepts that existed for a very small percentage of the population. And if you argue, then you were right, and there's absolutely no way that you could have asked Giuseppe to start going down certain high agency pathways. That just wouldn't have been possible. But I don't believe that humans are that slow to learn, and I don't believe that it is going to take that long, because people, like you pointed out, are already finding incredibly personalized ways to use this new intelligence that literally gets to know them as more context forms based on the questions they're asking, and the answers they're giving to questions. I think that opportunity certainly isn't being used by everybody. But I don't think we're necessarily talking about agency. I think we're talking about the foundational starting point, which people can't see yet in exactly the same way that people couldn't see that these cars need roads, and those roads need gas stations, and those roads and those cars collapsed, travel duration so that you could live in a suburb and still for you to work. And that home ownership is probably more of literally a fact that, people should be thinking, Henry Ford, this over actually thinking about the concept of homebuilding itself. So, these are big opportunities. I think the concept of having an organization that has its own intelligence that you can buy like a product. I think we're talking about, in almost all cases, what people do understand, which is we're still going from A to B. You can walk there, it takes a long time. We're going from A to B if we go at horse and carriage. We're certainly going from A to B if we go in a car. And now we're going to go from A to B in a self-driving car. And now we don't even need to be in the car for our groceries to be picked up and brought back to us. So I don't think it takes a long time for someone to agree to that, as long as they can put it into existence and they can order it, like ordering an Uber or ordering DoorDash. And I think that is deterministic. That is not AI. And I think the extension of that is how many of those things could actually be the beginning of new industries. I certainly know that a stat I heard the other day where 8 of the 10 highest paying jobs did not exist 10 years ago.
So the next question is like, it's everywhere, right? Atlassian, Block, you name it. AI is remarkable, but it also is a wonderful tool for executives and boards to use to make more EBIT, right? To make more profits. So will AI take jobs, right? I'm going to start with the statement that two things can be true at exactly the same time. And so those two things that are true is absolutely yes, AI will take jobs, and absolutely yes, AI will preserve jobs. So why I say two things can be true, because it's just based on a continuum, right? We talked about that before. But if we talk about the first one, which is AI is definitely going to take jobs, I think we just need to look at like the market cycles that are currently like happening in the world. The world is like, what a time to be alive, sarcasm included, which is it's pretty wild out there, right? And there is current market pressure that's happening with public markets and these major IPOs. So if I use one example, and this is just a tiny one, if you look at SpaceX, you look at Anthropic, you look at OpenAI, which is on the thematic, which is what I'm talking about. If they're gonna list for 3 trillion round number, any IPO, you're gonna need anywhere between 5 and 10% in free flow capital to go into the IPO, right? If we take 10%, that's $300 billion, which is larger than the entire SaaS industry, like full stop, right? And so where's that capital gonna come from? What's gonna happen to all the listed companies that are out there? And you see things like Dorsey, you see things like Cannon Brooks from Atlassian saying they're cutting jobs, which are kind of, let's face it, like you and I both know that AI is not nearly as pervasive as it needs to be within organizations. And so like, how is that gonna, how does that link to cutting jobs, right? So that would become my first statement. The other statement is it absolutely will preserve jobs, right? But there's an in-between stage where people have, like, my belief is like people will eventually have agency, right? I think they'll have specialization. And I think they'll delight in that specialization. But like the in-between time is going to be very painful.
You think that was a lot of words, Mr. Brudenell, and I just want to say that you normally fairly concise. That wasn't super concise, but let me unpack a couple of things. The first one is the word take. So there's AI is not going to take any jobs. Who asks people to leave? Human beings that have another set of objectives and an agenda, which is to increase profits or to stay alive. And I'll just focus on the staying alive bit. I think it's an existential reality and an existential crisis. And that, by definition, means the people who are acting, and you could see it as shocking, like letting go of 30 or 40% of your workforce. The fact that that can happen, and the fact that those companies, let's say, put in new types of systems and capabilities, that doesn't mean that they won't rehire again. And that doesn't mean that a lot of them aren't rehiring again. It just means that the types of roles that people should expect to have are going to be constantly being redesigned. And also they're being redesigned because of the new realities that are here. So at the end of the day, we are on the internet, we're already digital. The world communicates through the internet. The world does incredibly large amounts of things, but all of those things invariably are done through people, and people are the ones that are filling in the fields, and people are the ones that are ordering the DoorDash, and people just can't see how that's going to change. But people can't see how that has already happened in the manufacturing space. The vast majority of tasks that are done in almost any mass manufacturing plant, production or assembly, they're not done by people. The vast majority. And we're not talking about organizations that are, let's say, fairly loaded. And any organization that has, I think Dorsey was talking about 6, 7 layers of people to get to him, and he wants to reduce that down. And he's being mocked for that because I think he actually did say that he wants to reduce it to 1. Now, I know that for the vast majority of operating systems, if you don't have careful design around the structure, the taxonomy, the levels, then you will create a lot of problems for yourself. You create a lot of bottlenecks. And I don't think that's actually what he's saying. And I think what he's actually talking about is to do with centralized intelligence. I think he's talking about knowledge systems. I think he's talking about the fact that you don't have to go through people to get that information in the same way you had to get it before. And there isn't a single output in the world that isn't done through some type of knowledge task. Even if it's a manual, someone doing some type of manual labor, it still takes knowledge and understanding to do that task. And most of the time that's taught. Most of the time there are training programs and there are designed and all that. So I think we've been going through this constantly. I think the internet had exactly the same warning signs, and the warning signs are the things people pick up. You know, the care that people have in maintaining the status quo. You know, that's always going to be important for a particularly large percentage of the population, for all the reasons we've talked about before.
Yeah, I mean, you're again, you're always getting on technicalities. You're technically right. AI does not take jobs. Humans take jobs from other humans. So yeah, 100%. But I think it's just we've got to take it on. We got to look at the continuum, right? So, Block, which is Cash App, which is COVID, like Atlassian gives 25% stock grants to every employee, right? So they never turned a profit outside of 1 year when they IPO'd. So like there is an in between zone where realistically AI, like I believe the AI is being used as a beard for other things, right? For profitability. And I do believe like I believe that Dorsey believes that he says what he says, right? We got to balance that out. Like I just watched, remember when Zuckerberg said that 50% of the people of the planet is going to be on VR, right? During COVID, right? There's a lot of like tech bros are pretty good at putting big stuff out in the world that may or may not be true, right? So, and there's a lot of, that's why I started with like capital markets, because I think there's a lot of influence that capital markets are happening in these beliefs that are being thrown out there in the world. So I don't know. I think it's for the, like I always, there's two perspectives. Like there's the economic perspective, right? Which is the country or like generally, which I don't disagree with you. But for the average hunter who's going to sit in their job, right? They're going to lose like a good chunk of them are going to lose their job, right? Lose their jobs. And what does the retraining look like when there is intelligence, right? That's an interesting thing, right? To talk through. Podcast number 4. And
I don't disagree. I think timing is the true challenge, because this is going to take time, and there is definitely no clear overarching pathway to whatever it is that we're talking about. I think the timing around any one of the people who talk about delivery timing or when certain things will happen, that's always going to be a probabilistic, guess, basically. No, I don't think they're guessing without significant, it's not their gut feeling. I think they're actually advised, and I think they have a fair bit of effort and time and energy put into those types of predictions. But I do think that there's something more relevant, and the relevant foundational starting point is, and what I think the elephant in the room is that this is really quite significant, because businesses by design are built around goals, and goals are built around literally intelligence and understanding and desiring certain things that are better. And we get to start again where the average person has never had that opportunity, and the average person may not have that opportunity, if you were to think about it, in the next 24 months. But I know that it doesn't take long, and it's sort of incredible, because we lived in this world before where we literally captured knowledge and we turned it into intelligence, and they invariably ended up as bar charts. And everybody that was ever asked for years whether they were going to first of all get a mobile phone and then get internet on their phone, it was like you couldn't even see the bar. You couldn't even see the bar for yes, until eventually it was just overnight, and it feels overnight. And so I think I think it was Gates who said it, but I just think we terribly overestimate, and then we terribly underestimate.
Yeah.
And I think there's an opportunity to make sure that this time, first of all, there's a lot of people like us about to talk about it. And secondly, it affects everybody. And so this is not like just a country or a type of person. This is everybody.
Yeah. Mom got on Claude last week, so it's definitely everybody now. You should have seen the stuff that she's sending me. That's actually for another episode, which is these large language models, they move towards the middle, right? Which is concerning, right? The homogenization of thinking, definitely a real risk, as you called it before. But like jobs, okay. So humans take jobs, not AI. Agreed. right? There's like, I guess the point is, not the point. I guess a thought would be like, well, what is that continuum? Like, what's your prediction? What are you thinking over the next, like, what does 27 look like for the job market?
Look, I think the starting point is we are real physical beings, so we don't live in the internet. We are always in a time. I'm always in a place. You can't sort of get away from those first principles. We want to spend our time in, let's say, levels of anxiety that are manageable. Some of us choose higher anxiety pursuits. Some of us choose lower anxiety pursuits. I think the really big opportunity and the one that I'll certainly be pushing for is, I think this is the best time in history for, pretty much anyone who believes that something special and something interesting is now available to them. They have the opportunity to really spend time on discovering who they are and discovering all of the things that really, they want to spend their time doing for the rest of their life. And, that's not necessarily one thing. That could be, for some people, more and more variety. And I think the opportunity to earn money by providing back something of value is much more to do with the efficiency of the markets, which you and I, we're working on the efficiency of the market itself. And we know what it means to have market intelligence, and we know what powers and capabilities that is. When that is available to more and more people, then it becomes less and less about being a hustling entrepreneur, or even the word entrepreneur. And it just means somebody has got a place to put and be paid for the things that they do really well. I think that's why jobs and even the word jobs are going to be sort of pretty much challenged over the next 5 years. Now, in terms of 2 years, and this is where we can debate the timing. If you're a certain person that has already embraced AI, and we know lots, we're sort of unfortunately inundated by people who have drunk the Kool-Aid. If you were to go out into the broad population and really get into the details, I don't think people are not aware of AI. I think they're watching people with it while drinking the Kool-Aid. And I think that also, trying to make sense of things. I think they're not in weird ways asking each other in the same way. They're probably asking AI. And
they're embarrassed, right?
Well, I think that's the whole point. I think people need the opportunity to learn in private. I think people need the opportunity to have, those really big words that we talk about, like sovereignty. Because if you don't do that, you can't really easily have agents. You can't have higher conviction yourself. So if you told me that the vast majority of people can now rely on and use, let's say, prompts that they buy into, not necessarily can come up with themselves. So like products, if they have intelligence support products or decision support products, I take those people with that type of agency every day of the week than those that are just dealing off pure gut feel or pure heuristics or just all over the crowd. Like, I think they're the people that emerge first, and they're the ones that can be powerhours now. So we're in that world.
So are you saying that? And one of my beliefs is that you never answer my question directly.
And doesn't do any of the world.
But I got 2 years instead of 1 year, which is a win. So if I was to do a playback, is we can argue at the time period, but in the near future, are you saying that what you're predicting is will be a surge in kind of single founder businesses? Let's just call them like entrepreneurship in the next while.
So I think
I'm again, I learned what the word entrepreneur was in a year 5 spelling bee, and that was the moment that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, because that appealed to me. And I just don't think, and that word in Australia certainly wasn't used, and it was something that I could understand. The allocation of land, labor, and capital to produce a profit.
How old are you? What spelling?
No, year 5. So that's I was about 10 years old there. And
did you win?
No. Don't ask me to spell it. I'm into meaning. I'm not even spelling. So ultimately, Sancho, this is a very important question. So I think this is easily important and made important because people have to ask it now. I think there's no choice. And that's a really cool thing, in my opinion. I think people are much more capable than they believe. I think the framing of the modern world can make you pretty lazy pretty quickly. It's a pretty great place to live, but especially a country like this. I think there's an opportunity for people to really choose their stress, choose the things that make them grow, and that's an incredibly personal decision. And I don't think you can watch influencer videos that help you do that past a certain point. I think some of the influencers are great, and this is sort of not trying to derail the conversation, but I genuinely watch my children use social media, and sometimes I don't like it. And when I say social media, I'm really just talking about YouTube. They're both quite young, but they use it pretty well sometimes. And I think being able to use things well is the foundation of agency, being able to separate out and understand what's true and what's false is almost one of the most important skills that children need now, and so do adults. I think most people go to AI and they ask it a question. They should be going to AI and asking it, what questions should I ask? And this is, it's a small nuance, but it's incredibly important.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like, like my children as well. I agree with you. They're actually trained. They're trained on the system, right? They're trained on the internet. They're trained on what do they call it in school? Like cyber safety, right? So just like the average person who's not 10, not 13, or I didn't have that training. And so
a lot of adults, let's say most adults haven't, and I think the result of that is a bit challenging.
Yes, yeah. And the second thing is, like, I teach my children about like the power of articulation, right? And so what words matter, what words to choose, how to even everything from how to search. Like my youngest daughter doesn't even like use a keyboard anymore. Just voice for everything, right? Ambient computing. I don't think it's odd watching her use her laptop. But it's a point well taken. So kids our children are better off. Point number one, we agree with. Kind of answered my question, which is, so, prompts as products, those are going to appear in the near future.
But, I think understanding what a skill is and understanding what and how hallucinations and any type of limited context request have been turned into something that is like hyper specialized.
Yeah.
That goes right back to all the things you worked on in the past and what all type of insider intelligence creations about, which is a wider perspective and to arrive at something that you feel more confident in the field with. It's still probabilistic, but
Yeah.
there's really good probabilistic, and then there's really like a hope for the best out of probabilistic.
Yeah.
And I think the world's leaped in, and the herd sort of solved that problem. Like it has a lot of people now. That now organizations, whether they like it or not, they're all scattered. Like the herd is scattered, and there is no clear leader, and that's a painful place for a lot of people to be in. And I genuinely feel for them. I love them to understand that is part of the process of growth, and they have to grow now, and they have to grow, so they can't just be a me too, and they can't just follow what their domain or their industry tells them to do. And I'm not talking about every single industry, but I'm talking about scary sort of reality where the American service called ONED, which is the one that OpenAI and Anthropic use to sort of determine the tasks and the jobs in the world and what we're really talking about. I think that the important thing to understand is there's only 1,000 defined roles, which sounds really kind of tight, but there might be million combinations of those in job descriptions. But foundationally, only maybe 100 of those are the roles that most of us know, and the ones that are almost in every company. And so there's 900 roles that are probably going to be fine for a while, like a beekeeper, every type of barista. Your job's not going anywhere anytime soon. You may have some competition though from a lawyer or an accountant who is in a second or third grade.
Who could make a good cup of coffee?
They might make a better one, but no, they might be moved into something that they didn't realize how much better life can be, because they've been sitting by a computer and now they're talking to customers and making beautiful coffee and caring about their crema.
Yeah, I do get kicked in the head a lot intellectually, so maybe if I can trade that for bee stings.
I think you should try being a barista for a while.
2027, what's my prediction? When it comes to jobs, I'll go back to what I was talking about before. I think we're going into the world's biggest IPO market that's ever happened. And I think that's going to be a really big proof point for what's going to happen in capital markets, which is going to like filter down everywhere, right? I don't think people really know what the answer is, right? If the SpaceX, Anthropic, OpenAI, the first one that's going to get off is going to get most of the capital, right? So I think that's going to be SpaceX, I think, with XAI in there. And if that goes well, then that's going to almost like usher in an entirely new way that markets are going to operate, right? How that capital is going to be, where it's going to come from, the size of the capital, like that's beyond my pay grade. I haven't thought about that, and I probably can't because of my brain size. But I think that's one big thing that's going to influence where markets go. So if it goes well, then I think what we might go see is exactly opposite of what I said. There might actually be jobs expansion, which comes from it, because we're going into now actually execution or implementation of AI within organizations. So that's number one.
People understand what, I mean, let's say the average person doesn't really understand, participate in, even think about capital markets or IPOs. They all know the names, SpaceX and OpenAI and Anthropic and all of the things that they might use on a daily basis, like Claude or ChatGPT. You know, we're talking well over 1 billion people when you combine those together.
Mm.
But I think drilling into what you're saying is in a very specific way within that. So what do you think when it comes to someone like, you know, love him or hate him, like an Elon Musk or a Sam Altman or a Dario from Anthropic, like they've been shipping, pushing hard, doing, you know, quite incredible things. If they're now focused on making sure the world, as you said, has more jobs, they're now building literal capital and capability.
Yeah, they're literally buying companies to reform them, right?
Through that, what do you think that looks like? Given it looks like it's going to happen, so I don't think we're not going to have those IPOs, and I don't think that as you said before, those businesses are going to sit there with you know, small ambitions and aspirations. I think they're companies that may have bigger aspirations like we do than any other company that's come before, unless you go back, you know, under.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. You saw like Anthropic and OpenAI are putting a fund together, right? It's essentially to buttress up PE, right? Which is, you know, my interpretation is they haven't figured out a way to put this into enterprise yet, and so, well, I have capital to deploy, and so I'm going to do a deal with PE companies to effectively buy them to be able to implement. I do truly believe that is a post IPO exercise, because if they go up on the boards and it's soft, that's not good. And so by buying companies, they can actually buy revenues and users, right, downstream, which is gonna keep it flowing, like keep the post IPO.
Cyber's happened before. Google bought hundreds of companies. You know, Meta's bought hundreds of companies, probably thousands. So you know, the truth is that's the way of the world, and you do buy into markets, and whether it's, you know, in gigantic spaces like health. You know, gigantic spaces like automotive. I think these are all like, they haven't been touched for under 150 years. And there's very few CEOs that would have ever got money in any type of capital raising saying they're going to change the whole industry or they're going to change the whole world.
Yeah.
I think we have 3 or 4 companies at the same time. And then, you know, real challenger upstarts like us going into the world and providing something that can only be done on this new substrate, can only be done with this, you know, non-fancy way of saying that the world has changed literally. And I don't think any business is going to succeed unless it can put something that's better into the world. I think that's what we're pushing very hard, and it's a big push. It is going to be very, very, very both entertaining for the world, because these are more things. And you know, if I was in the travel industry, then Google bought the biggest back-end database that managed and all the flight bookings. You know, these were, you know, highly contentious. You know, the regulators looked at it. I think that's the world we're living in now. I think there's there's effort literally to work out how to buy companies without buying them. I think there's going to be effort to really think about what that new organization design looks like. We were lucky enough to have one of the head product managers from Anthropic in our office last week, and it sounds like an incredible amount of what we're talking about is underway. It sounds like there's incredible amounts of effort in investing in the changing of and upgrading and improvement of industries that have been around for a long time. What I keep kind of telling our team that humans still have to go from A to B, and humans still have to eat, but humans still have to stay healthy. None of those things really change, but the way that happens, I think, is going to change, and I think that's pretty much going to be funded by these incredibly large and all that more affordable intelligence powered, where the intelligence is not only coming from both humans and AI. And I think that's just unprecedented.
Yeah, I mean, that's the optimist view. Like the other side of the argument is, the willpower's there. I think we both agree, right? By these companies, right? They're literally buying entire industries. If post IPO is soft, right? And if the question is, can they? And I think the answer is yes, right? But it's like, how long do markets have to like absorb the weight for it? If it's soft post IPO, then I don't know. I think there's like, how quickly markets can sour, and the impacts, right? The impacts of those things, right? So I don't have the stats on the top of my head in terms of like sector employment, but healthcare, nursing, like we're going to need people, right? Retail, hospitality, you're going to need people. But what happens in those critical knowledge work, which have a large share of actually the capital to deploy, right? If that starts to get squeezed, whichever way, right? Either it never existed in the first place, right? And it just poofs and disappears, which markets can do, or it gets squeezed up, right? To a few people, right? Meaning pulling out the capital deployment from the middle. But interestingly, like the U.S. is the growth in upper middle class has been increasing, which is also interesting. So that goes against my argument. But I think if it goes soft, then we could see some significant like belt tightening and problem. Like everybody needs to eat, but that doesn't mean they're eating ramen noodles versus they're going out for something.
I mean, let's sort of drill in a little bit more to our world, as well as what is quite obvious and what has made Anthropic so successful so quickly, which is it's focused on the organization, it's focused on the corporation.
Yeah, made a smart bet, right? Slower but better, seems to be.
It doesn't look slow from the outside.
Well, now it doesn't, but 18 months ago it did.
Yeah,
right?
But what I think matters, and this is where it's not about the future as much as it is about the understanding that we already have enough intelligence in the large language models to do the vast majority of tasks if you break them up enough in an organization. And we're now talking about a company like Anthropic, who are becoming very quickly masters of understanding exactly what tasks can be offloaded to something like Claude Code. And when you think about it, those tasks are literally running in front of people's eyes as they've asked them to make an app for them or do some type of work. Literally hundreds of tasks.
Yeah, I should encourage everyone who's all 6 subscribers who are watching this video to like you've told me this, right? Watch what Claude is doing, like expand that thing, and it's like literally going through and doing the task, right? I'm thinking of this, I should think of that.
And let's be honest, a lot of those tasks may have been thought of, but a lot of them haven't been by the person that's watching those tasks. In fact, they Dave and open it up and look at the task. And you know what that also means? It means that they have a new job, which is to go to their boss and get more tokens, because
always be maxing.
They're whether you're token maxing or not, ultimately, we want to hope that the outputs and what that person is building makes their job better and makes them more capable, as opposed to realizing that they've become, let's say, subject to Anthropic's desire to get them to get more tokens for them, which is very obvious that they're successful.
Yeah. On the topic of maxing, because I do like talking about maxing with you. Are you a belief maxer, or do you max beliefs, or do you Do you have min beliefs with max conviction?
Ned, I want to say that the max and the min,
Maxing is always good, so both of them are good. But
they're the result ranges, but again, it just depends on which line you want to go to. You want to max certain things, and you definitely want to min others. I think the whole conversation and what is really interesting is people want to maximize, let's say, something, and if they're not focused on the right thing, that's going to end up pretty. It may sort of appear pretty good in the short term, but it's going to end up well in the long term. And I think the other thing is when you're really thinking about maxing and building things that have seem very impressive to you, and certainly were things that you couldn't do yourself, and certainly not in the time frames. You've still got to ask yourself, is that landfill? Is that things that people are going to see again, or is it just another fancy, bigger and larger file in your filing system that no one else is going to see, or 3 people that saw it, really didn't get that much value from it. So these are big questions that I think we get to ask, which is great. And the truth is that absolutely some people are going to get incredibly large amounts of value. And I think we're very lucky because I think we can do that. But there are plenty of people that are trying to token max, let's put it that way. And they're not really understanding that the value has to start from what the AI is being asked to do in the first place.
yeah, it's like turning your lights on as bright as possible, right? To think like you can work harder because your lights are brighter.
I think it's even worse than that.
Yeah, probably. Two things. One is belief maxing. That's a good title for this this particular podcast. Belief maxing in AI and jobs or something like that. But let's. I do have a question. We talked about I do like titles. The master of summary. Tell me. We talked about we talked about skills before. So I do want to ask, I do want to link that back to potentially beliefs where we started, because it's interesting. It's like a skill, a building block for a belief. Don't answer that yet. But on the topic of skills, it got me thinking about what are the tools that you and I are using often. And I actually had a new skill that I've been using. It's called the Council of 5. And so there's an expansionist, reductionist, there's these 5, and I get the Council of 5 to run on everything that I have, which is great. One of them I want to rename Paul Chan because it never agrees with me. But I guess it's the expansionist. It's 100% the expansionist. But is there, before we go to skills and beliefs, skills as building blocks for beliefs, talk about are there any tools that you're using? Are there any approaches that you're using right now that you weren't a short while ago? That you think are impacting you positively?
I mean, obviously, the audience doesn't know how I work, but I'm always mostly using canvases. I mean, that's my most used tool. I use Miro, which is a fantastic product. But Miro is an infinity canvas, and when you have an infinity canvas and you have a lot of ideas, those canvases for me get very big very quickly. I'm actually working on and thinking through what my actual best work design would be, and the thing that is sort of being worked on at the moment, and I'm lucky enough to have resources to do this, is an analysis of the canvases I've created over the last 8 years. There's 1.3 million items that I've placed personally in those canvases, so that's quite a lot, and I can't believe
that was on my low number.
But yeah, well, there's another number of 3 million that will separate that out. That's not exactly all of my words, but that's 1.3 million of my words. And the other thing is, canvases have XY coordinates, and you can kind of work out the clusters of things. And so there's an incredibly rich amount of information that we're now mining from my own data, and having the opportunity with AI to take that to the next level and really turn that into something that feels more like, thousands of hours of work that I would never have been able to do, or certainly wouldn't be cost effective to assign to a team. That's now very, very exciting for me. So I'm kind of feeling like a lot of the work I've been doing is really experimenting around, what you would call belief maxing.
Context, at the context engineering layer is that would be your context layer. Right, and then are you prompt you're doing prompt engineering, trying to figure out prompt engineering to access it, or harness?
The other thing that again you would know is that I'm producing something like 100 to 200,000 words a week
Minute
in transcripts,
And when you have millions of words that have been in what seems,
How many of those are F words?
there's a few F words, but there's a lot of
I remember I have a rate of every 75 seconds in some of my analysis. We're bringing it down this one, but we can always end on it.
well, something that I know upsets you, but a lot of the words have been created from what looks like mostly monologic conversation, not dialogic conversation. But I do get a lot of feedback from your people in the room with their facial expressions and their umming and ahhing and their agreeing and disagreeing. But I do think that that all of the sort of worlds that I ever dreamed about having have all kind of come together because I don't even remember actually saying half the things that I've said, and I don't remember how long ago actually I was working on some of the things we're talking about right now. It's scary to me to think how much I could look at the same thing from different angles, draw exactly the same things literally hundreds and hundreds of times, not get bored of doing that because I'm, as you know, fairly low attention span when it comes to repetitive things. But it's the most repetitive thing I could ever imagine, and it's crazy. And I'm learning so much just looking at my own work and being annoyed at myself at just how much hasn't made it into the real world yet. So there's a lot, as you know, that the world hasn't seen in terms of what we're doing.
1.2 million.
Well, let's just say that there's millions of things that need to be summarized into real, useful, and meaningful context that can be used in those skills you're talking about. And if you're armed with that, and it's not just, and don't think for a second it's just my words. These are coming from research papers. They're coming from every type of process and system and huge numbers of domains. So there's a confidence that I have in organizational design and what organizations are, and the confidence that I have in using all these words, because I literally have been thinking about them and writing them out and typing them myself, thousands of times. And so that is not what I expect everyone to do, and that's why we're building a product. And that's the great thing and the most beautiful thing about products is I don't know how my car works past a certain point. I certainly don't know how my computer works and how the cameras in this room work, but I definitely know that they're adding value, and I don't need to know that. And so I think there's an incredibly large number of products like that we're building and others are building that will make AI feel more empowering and, really, really underline that word empowering, that you will be empowered. You will be able to actualize things you couldn't do before. And that's, exciting for me when I think about it for my children, but it should be pretty exciting for someone who, if they really took a step back and they really looked at what they were doing in their job, and they replaced that with the possibilities, then absolutely there's going to be a short-term disruption. And I hope that that's not as painful for people as they think, but I'm really hoping that that becomes, something people can talk about in the rearview mirror pretty quickly.
Okay. My belief, things that have shifted. So my answer is none of my beliefs have shifted today. I really enjoyed it. I always enjoy talking to you. But I also think on the topics of belief, like when we were looking through the run through of this of the podcast and stuff like that, I think beliefs are a hard place to start. I think it's very esoteric at the moment. I think it's fraught with danger, says all religions, and so that's what I'm kind of grappling with, struggling with at the moment. So I'm much more about building blocks. That's why I was going with skills before, because you said it before. I have to work from today and what maybe I'm the muse of what today is, right? And so yeah, so I just again, I was kind of struggling with this, what is my belief?
You definitely represent the vast majority of people, but I still think
The average man.
the accuracy of the words matter more than ever. And so again, when you've arrived at it, I certainly didn't start, and I couldn't possibly imagine talking this way even 15 years ago, even being surrounded by academics in the business that we were running. But I can tell you this: please separate out the difference between faith and belief. Belief is something that you can actually get to. I think faith is something that people are really talking about, which is something you can never prove. And so we're talking about things that could be proven or not. That means we can be right or wrong. And I love being wrong. I just doesn't happen that often.
For everyone, he does not like being wrong. My brain was broken. The things I believed 5 years ago that I don't believe now. Probably. I can. You know what? I'm wrong often, unlike Paul apparently. There's two beliefs that I want to call out. One is I told one of my good friends, this was back when I was 18, when DVDs came out. I said DVDs are never going to be a thing, which I thought was quite funny. Never been more wrong in my life.
I was absolutely the same. I could not understand why they were.
Ah, what the hell? I know, VHS peaked. It was peak humanity. But the other thing is a bit more than 5 years ago. But I remember I was in the UK for Pure Profile. Remember we used to say at that hotel that used to be a prison. Yes, and we used to like meet in the prison cells with.
Was it nice hotel?
Yeah, it was a prison. At the time we didn't have a lot of means. Kapinski, right? And there's that street. What's that? Carnegie's. Yeah. And I saw a person talking on FaceTime for the first time, and I thought, God, that's dumb. They look so stupid. And so my belief around the power of video in connecting with people, that has definitely changed. And I think that it's a good thing. It's made the world better, right? Being able to call my mom, or when we're traveling, call our kids and stuff like that, as opposed to just talking to them like audibly. So that's a belief. I don't know, not a good one, but in an area that I was wrong.
This is our first podcast. It's probably been a long time coming, but I want to see whether we can make a prediction. Firstly,
I think we both
3
agree that-
episodes.
well, I think that's a good point. So, you jumped right to it, but I think if there was an opportunity to connect with people in a different way,
Yeah.
that this gets both of us on camera, which is not that often that we do this, and also you're so busy and I'm so busy, and even though we're co-CEOs, we really do take our responsibilities pretty seriously, and we overlap, unfortunately behind closed doors, and have these arguments quite regularly. So it is nice if we could share them. Do you think people are going to enjoy our arguments? I mean, we get really arguing too much today, but I think there's an opportunity to really talk about things in, a lot more of an honest and open way.
What do I think? I think no one on this planet really knows what they're doing. And you and I have, albeit different perspectives, we have high alignment in where we think the world's going. There's not a lot of podcasts with people like this, but that's probably wrong. That is
That's
definitely
way
an
too many
incorrect
podcasts.
statement. I think so. I was jokingly say like, how many podcasts are we going to go to? But then I said 3. I think there could be a lot. I think we need to add people into the room, right? To get different perspectives on things. But I think people will be interested in the future versus present dynamic that you and I have, and we're connected to a lot of stuff, right? And we're on the tools, and we're on the tools well. So that kind of puts us ahead of many people when it comes to like access.
But I'm not 100% sure I agree with you. And certainly this day bringing people in. And the reason I say that is you and I are on the front line, literally, and talking to more people than most, particularly you. I think your perspectives are very easy to understand and very authentic, because you're talking directly, literally about conversations you're having almost 5 or 10 times a day. My perspective is a little different, because I probably do pick up on all the words, and I think about being transcribed literally all the time now. And so I feel like when you understand the value of that, and you think about what and how people are going to have the opportunity to, let's say, make a lot more decisions that they may start uncomfortable, they need to do them pretty quickly. I think hearing our perspectives and probably a little bit more discourse and a little bit more argument and a little bit more rapid fire so that we can talk over each other without being too structured. So it feels like we normally do. Yeah. And at the same time, I think I want to say something which I probably never said out loud, but I just want to say it out loud. I wasn't ever sure that being a co-CEO was going to be that logical for me as a type of personality and character. But I have to say that when you just design any type of system or organization, or without using any fancy words, bring capable people together. I love the fact that you're focusing on some of those things, maybe a little more than you love it sometimes.
So
We could talk about another episode. It's called The Trap that I fell into.
No, this is we're going to be around for a while, for a long time, and we've been around for a long time, and we're going to have the opportunity to put a lot of things into the world that I've been working on for a long time, and I think you are frankly ensuring happens, and that's unbelievably relevant and important. And I think you actually are much more like most people than me, and so I think it's pretty important, because I think being someone who's at that frontier, truly at that frontier, sometimes I could be disconnected from where the whole world is, and so this is an opportunity on camera to be brought back into certain types of reality. Although, as many people internally know, we do have many discussions around how important that is, and I think it's also going to be important as well to see whether there's other streams and other people that can also want to join and be that true innovator and come with this as well. And that's something that I'm hoping that a podcast like this can do.
Yeah, thank you. That's very nice of you to say. I'll dedicate the next 4 hours of the podcast to talk about nice things. But you'll have to tune into that. With that, we'll wrap up. Yes.
Let's wrap up.
Episode 1.
Episode 1.
Dunsey.
Done.
Look at us.